But first up this evening, stronger than expected ISM signals no recession. That is good. Question, though, is the Obama-Bernanke QE infinity stimulus plan going to bail out the president in this election? And then what happens down the road? Does it give us a huge inflationary bubble? Joining our Kudlow Club tonight is Lee Munson. He's Chief Investment Officer of Portfolio LLC and author of Rigged Money. You're in a tough crowd, Lee Munson, but I want to ask you this. You got the Fed. The Fed's blowing smoke and water and money at the stock market. Yeah. We did have a good manufacturing report today. I like that because that's good for America. There's a lot of stuff that's not so good, like jobs and unemployment. Are you a bull or a bear? Do you believe the market's going up or down?
I think the market's going to go up, but I'll tell you something. This ISM number today was so important. You know, recall earlier this year we had these bad jobs numbers, and we were concerned that the market, could lose steam going into the election. Job numbers started to pick up all of a sudden. I think this manufacturing thing has been put to rest. We had great numbers, and I think it's going to allow us to focus more on the election, and I think that this was just a hump that we needed to
You're going to rip through October as a bull? October is a tricky month, as we know. It's got a bad history behind it, but history can sometimes be changed.
I got something in my pocket. I got an uncle who's accommodative, name's Ben, and he's going to flood the system and jack up the Dow Jones. And quite frankly, if I was the incumbent right now, I'd be very, very pleased and send him a big gift basket. But I will say...
I think he has, by the way, fruit and goodies. Jimmy Pefferkoukas, can I ask you a question about this very important point? It may be that the Fed is not political. It may be that Mr. Bernanke is not political. But all the Federal Reserve governors in Washington on the board are Obama appointees. And they are all easy money, big pump priming. Lord knows some of them were involved in fiscal policy, was big spenders. Does that influence and affect your thinking about this election? The Fed may not be political, but you got all these Obama people, and look what they're doing.
Well, I mean, certainly the people in Washington, the people selected by the president, they're Democrats. They probably believe in a lot easier monetary policy. But I think the story of this, whatever you want to call it, QE eternity or QE forever, is that it took a while for Bernanke to sort of make the case, slowly build the case that we need to have this open-ended bond buying program. So it certainly wasn't a walkover. People weren't jumping, out of their chairs to embrace this. And as I've said before, I think Bernanke himself really respects the Fed, is an institutionalist, doesn't want it viewed as a political thing. Very worried about this. Is very worried about this audit.
But I want to ask the difficult, cynical question. Is this part of the Obama re-election campaign?
No,
I know
that's a ridiculous
assertion nobody wants to hear, but I want to ask it.
It's a ridiculous assertion.
Why is it ridiculous that they appointed all the governors of the Federal Reserve Board? This is the Obama
Ben Bernanke, who preceded Obama, recognizes one very simple thing. The obstructionism that's going on in Congress has rendered fiscal policy a non-entity. And if you're serious as Fed chairman about addressing unemployment, about addressing growth, and you recognize that there's outright obstruction going on in Congress that stops any fiscal policy from taking place, what are you going to do?
David, what policy?
Monetary
policy?
It's the only tool left.
Go ahead.
Look, I talk to Republicans all the time. I'm a reporter. They're really thinking about this Fed as a political issue, that Obama, this is a stimulus package for Obama, and Romney and the Republicans better be running against this, not as some kind of complicated fiscal issue, but as a stimulus package that's very political, trying to pump up this economy.
Because Romney has said on the campaign trail he opposes this quantitative easing 3 in perpetuity. Romney has also said he will not reappoint Ben Bernanke. Now, Romney's not a crazy guy on this. He's from the Boston area. Bernanke was MIT. I mean, there's not a lot of sympathy for Bernanke inside that campaign or the GOP. That interests me a lot. And that's why I'm asking a difficult question. I don't think there's a direct... I'm not saying that Bernanke is deliberately doing QE3, because probably it won't work in the next 6 weeks anyway. It never does.
It hasn't worked up till now.
But the point I want to ask you, Jimmy, is was there, the Federal Reserve is like the Supreme Court, is now controlled by left-wing Democrats.
Listen, here's what I think the future, and this is why this whole is so important. Bernanke's not going to be there forever. I don't think he wants another term. I think it's very easy to say fire him because he doesn't want another term. But I think you've seen a fundamental shift in the Federal Reserve, and with this policy, this is now going to be how the Fed operates in the future, where they're going to choose some sort of target, and they're going to shoot for that target. They're going to buy bonds. This is not the same Federal Reserve, and this has going to change.
Let me go back to Lee before you.
Guys,
Lee, let me just ask you this: is there? Some people say there's an inflationary bubble coming,
right,
that this unprecedented pump priming by the Fed. And I will add to that, indirectly, the Fed is financing the deficits. Indirectly. They're selling the deficits to the banks, and the Fed's buying it from the banks. This is a bit like Venezuela. This is a bit like Argentina. It's a bit like Latin America. Is there an inflationary bubble coming?
I don't think so, and here's the bottom line. We can't get industry right now, the manufacturers, the places that want to borrow this money, we can't get them to take on projects. Now, I do think the politicalization of the current Wall Street right now is that we have CEOs talking about how they don't want to invest because they're unsure about regulation and tax code. Okay, and I get that, but I would moderate that by saying we have trillions of dollars that are ready to get into money flow, to get that velocity, which is what we need, Larry, to get inflation. We need the money to get higher velocity, and they're not doing it because they can't get a return on their investment.
What's Romney going to say in the debate tomorrow to really articulate this point?
He's not going to be able to say those trillions can get money in motion.
Here's what Mitt Romney said. Mitt Romney said,
too slow.
To the extent that there's been any recovery at all, that we've had any job growth, any economic growth, that it's been built on trillion-dollar deficits, easy money. Because to what extent that we've had a recovery has been completely phony. Remember what Obama said. Remember what Obama said. I'm going to build a new foundation. This is going to be a built-to-last economy. It's built on consumer debt, easy money, and borrowing.
Let me jump in there. The only argument that Romney and the Republicans have is look at how terrible things are. They're the America lose crowd.
You mean the economy? No, the only argument they have is the failing economy. That's a hell of an argument.
Right. So guess what? Bright signs in the market you indicated today. Bright signs in manufacturing. Couldn't possibly be because of good public policy. No.
You do realize the economy is weak. True. There are good. You realize this year's worse than last year, right?
You do realize that in Ohio unemployment is down.
I know you're an Obama insider. I know you're right.
No, I'm an outsider. They won't let me.
You're a heartbeat from the Oval Office.
Please.
Does President Obama understand the Federal Reserve? The reason I ask this, does he know what Bernanke is doing? The reason I ask this is most reports suggest he only read about a third to a half of his intelligence reports.
Oh, that's
things
insulting,
like security for the Benghazi embassy.
You're too good for that.
No.
You're too good.
Most people have reported that he's only gotten, and in fact, he got it online. He was doing it through his iPad. So let me ask you,
you got two good arguments.
Do you think he understands? Do you think he really understands what's going on at the Federal Reserve?
I do, and
national security, monetary policy,
now, think
whatever.
About this. Think about the operations of the White House. If I get a little kind of in the weeds here with you guys, they've got a Council of Economic Advisors. They've got the Domestic Policy Council. They've got the National Economic.
But Larry's question is he ready if Romney comes at him on the Fed in the debate, is Obama going to really be able to articulate a defense on fiscal policy? You think Obama's ready? I haven't heard him give any speech where he really seems to be in the weeds on these issues. I think he has a vulnerability.
I'll make a prediction.
You realize who Obama's chief economist is? Obama is David Axelrod. David Axelrod is the chief economist.
Here's what he's
I thought he was the top campaign strategist.
Look, if he takes my advice, which you won't do, I would talk about the following. I have a bill that all kinds of economists say would create at least 1 million jobs. Congress won't touch it.
22 million to go. Down 1 million.
Congress won't touch it. So I guess that's what has to.
I think that we haven't answered the fundamental question that's irritating Larry, which is all this money that we've printed.
Right.
The problem is if Romney gets in this pro-business thing, is that going to make that money in motion, and are we going to have inflation like your Venezuela idea come about?
Well, I don't care much about Venezuela, although it looks like what's his name's going to lose. Chavez is going to lose. Cool. But I do remember Argentina, having been down there several times in the 1990s. You print all this money, you buy all these government bonds, you get a triple-digit inflation rate. America's not Argentina, but it does bother me. Anyway, I got to jump. Lee Munson, thanks for so you're a bull. You're a bull.
I'm a bull. It's okay to be a bull.
All right, it's okay to be a bull. Our Kudlow caucus is staying throughout the hour. Much more information coming.